My name is David Troxel, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Dementia-Related Behavior, Managing Challenging Moments with Confidence. And this is the third in a three-part series that I'm doing with my friends at Trilogy Health Services. I'm the author of a book called The Best Friends Approach to Dementia Care, and happy to be a consultant to Trilogy Health Services and its BFF Memory Care program. I love the name BFF, kind of inspired by that phrase, best friends forever. I'm known for my writing and teachings about dementia care, and I've authored with my friend Virginia Bell, co-authored 6 influential books and many articles. I've worked in university and Alzheimer's Association settings, and today work as a writer and a dementia care consultant. Like many of you on this webinar, I've also been a family member, a family care partner to my mother, Dorothy, who passed away with Alzheimer's in 2008. Trilogy is a licensed provider of the Best Friends approach to its innovative and life-affirming BFF program. And I'm so proud that a company like Trilogy has chosen to use the work that Virginia Bell and I have written to be a springboard for its innovative dementia care program. Today's presentation, we have a lot packed in here. I'm going to start off talking about the experience of dementia because I think it's very important to have some empathy and understanding of the root causes of behavior. We'll talk about dementia-related behavior. We'll talk about the potential medical and health causes of behavior along with potential environmental causes. And then I'm going to kind of drill down and talk about some challenging moments related to apathy, aggression, agitation, exit seeking, repetitive actions and words, care refusal, bathing, paranoia, hallucinations, a lot to cover. And of course, hopefully a few success stories involving the Best Friends approach and my friends at Trilogy. And there will be an opportunity for you to send in questions that we will promptly answer. Before we take a deep dive into behavior, I always like to take a deep breath and just sort of reflect on the experience of dementia. I love the old saying that I think is very relevant to this webinar. You can't know someone well until you've walked a mile in his or her shoes. I know that Trilogy does a lot of training with its staff members about understanding what it's like to have Alzheimer's disease. And when we think about this experience, it does offer a lot of clues and cues about behavior that can be very, very helpful. So let's think about this experience of dementia. Imagine what it would be like to not always know who's around you in the room, where you are, what's happened to your money, what's next for you, not be able to do some of the things you've always been able to do. And I think it must lead to a lot of embarrassment, some fear, anxiety, confusion, damage to self-esteem, sadness, depression. Something very important to many of us, loss of control, not being able to control what happens in your daily life, and of course, agitation and even anger. This doesn't mean that there isn't laughter and joy and happy times when people have dementia. They are sometimes very pleasantly confused in the moment. But when you have a disease, when you have Alzheimer's, Lewy body dementia, vascular dementia, one of these dementias that's robbing you of this cognition, you can see that it can be a very tough experience, a very tough life. So again, why are there challenging moments? Well, I think a lot of it, when you think about it, is really the person's attempt to just cope with the world around them, to understand what's happening. Many of us, probably all of us, would have challenging moments if we had dementia. I mean, how many of us have been stuck in a long line, waiting in line, stuck in traffic? How many of us have lost our wallet or can't find our car keys, maybe when we have to go somewhere very important? You have that sense of panic that hits you, that sense of confusion sometimes that things aren't quite well. So we want to recognize that often the person is really trying to understand what's happening in their world. And the other part of it that we're going to talk a bit more about is that challenging moments can be triggered by health-related causes like pain, depression, medication changes. There's something called delusions that are very common with Alzheimer's disease. They're called fixed false ideas. Someone has taken my purse, or you owe me money when maybe you don't. These delusions can be very common. I think it's very important ultimately to kind of become a detective, to look for root causes. And I love this picture here because it kind of reminds me that having Alzheimer's in many ways is like being lost in a foreign country where you don't speak the language, where you don't really know your way around. And we have that angst and anxiety. And many people with dementia, they are kind of living in this foreign world to them, trying to find their way through, trying to find the right direction. So what are some difficult things that can happen? Well, of course, many things, but I love the picture here of the purse on the stairs. My own mother was always looking for her purse. She would hide it under the pillow and then forget it was there and just be panicked that someone had taken her purse. The slide on the upper right there, hallucination, particularly with Lewy body dementia. Many people with Lewy body dementia have visual hallucinations, that sometimes they even have a hallucination related to smells or sounds. And these can be benign, maybe a fun cat on the table, but they can also be very frightening. Visual spatial, if you look on the bottom left slide and the one in the middle, white spaghetti on white plates, they may not be able to see what's going on, but if you put it on maybe a different kind of placemat, maybe they can then see it. And of course, rummaging, looking for things, repetitive behavior, all of these things can be part of a day in life with dementia. Now, the next slide is very important because I want you to know that sometimes we overthink these things. We may be looking at something that happened in someone's childhood, or really trying to do an elaborate plan about why this behavior is happening, but we're missing the most obvious thing, which it might be health related. And pain is something that can absolutely trigger challenging behavior. Because after all, a person with dementia, you see, they may not be able to name their pain. If I have a toothache, I can call my dentist and get some help. But if a person with dementia is starting to get a very bad toothache, they may not be able to connect the dots. They may not be able to name it and say, hey, nurse, I have a bad toothache. I have an infection. I need to go to a dentist. And instead, they just experience this pain. So remember that pain is something to look for. It can trigger behavior. And one clue is a sudden change in behavior or mood. So if your mom or dad or family member, husband, wife, partner, whoever it is, if they're kind of doing fine, but then boom, they really begin to exhibit some challenging behaviors, look for pain. Again, pain often goes unreported. And you can sometimes kind of figure these things out. If you're helping somebody get dressed and you see them wincing, or there's some facial expressions when you're touching different parts of their body, that can be a clue. Moaning sounds, audible sounds. If they are constant, that can be a real worry. If someone has some moaning or is exhibiting, the sounds of pain, you give them an ice cream cone, and for several hours they're fine, then it probably is not some kind of chronic pain condition. And of course, again, being a detective, looking for possible causes. And in some cases, maybe it's someone's long time, chronic arthritis or other issues. And in these cases, something like, an over-the-counter analgesic like Tylenol or time-release Tylenol, that can also really help tamp down the pain and tamp down the behavior. Depression is a long time, well-known enemy of the brain. And there's actually research dating back to the 1950s that people who have long histories of untreated clinical depression might be at greater risk for cognitive disease later in life. So depression does seem to be quite common in Alzheimer's disease. It's kind of a fellow traveler, so watch for it. You kind of know it when you see it, someone who's not responding to the puppy in their lap the way they have been before, the apathy, kind of the flat expression. With depression, when you suspect it, you want to treat it, because if someone's depressed and demented, everything is worse. You want to lift up the treatable depression. So consider those antidepressant medications, which really aren't too bad with elders. Look for meaningful activities, including time out of doors, animals, and music. I know my friends at Trilogy, one thing that's so important is when it's a nice sunny day, getting those residents outside into the sunshine. Again, it gives them natural vitamin D and helps fight depression. And of course, staff or friends and family, of course, you can make an emotional connection. Expressing affection and friendship, I think, is a great treatment for depression. Mom, I love you. I'm here for you. Or Mrs. Smith, I'm so happy to be your friend. You're a wonderful person. Surrounding somebody with this kind of comforting words and comforting environment, again, is a great treatment for depression. Medication. again, as we look at these sort of checklist of issues around behavior, you want to address anything that you can potentially fix. We can't fix Alzheimer's, but we can sometimes fix pain and we can fix depression. Medication. Is there too much, too little, the wrong meds? All medications have side effects, even aspirin that you might take, for example, as a prevention for heart attack or heart illness, it can cause nausea. So watch for medication, look for any new medications that have been prescribed, any recent changes. And of course, particularly if someone's living by themselves, we so often see one danger for somebody with dementia living alone is that they take all their pills wrong. They're taking over-the-counter pills. They may take 4 of this, 3 of this. So be sure to track the medication. This section on the right, I think, is particularly powerful for me. And I'm so happy that Trilogy really shares my philosophy. The BFF program believes that hugs are better than drugs, because when you use these psych medications to treat behavior, the challenge is they don't really work all that well. It's very hard to get the dosages right. Often there are significant side effects like a greater risk of falling down. If someone's not moving, if they're sedated, you have more urinary tract infections. So if you need a psych medicine, be sure to evaluate it on a regular basis, start low and go slow. And as you'll see in that second bullet there, behavioral environmental interventions can sometimes really substitute a medication, giving them more music therapy, activity, engagement, keeping them busy, as you'll see a few examples in a minute, can often really lift the person up, reduce this dementia-related behavior without medication. Now, I'm going to take a minute and talk a bit about the environment and how it can impact behavior. So if you take a look at this slide here, I think I'll start with the middle one. You see basically kind of a white door with a kind of neutral background. And you could even, in theory, paint the door the same color as the surrounding wall, because we don't want our family members living at home to walk out the door without us knowing about it. So you see, in this case, I think that's a pretty good job of an environment that's dementia friendly, because for the elder eye, that might look like one continual wall. Now look to the left, you see you have a door there that's painted in a contrasting color. That will be a welcome invitation for somebody to come and go, even when you don't want them to. Now, the far right, you see a bathroom that is all white, okay? Now, again, for the elder eye, they may not be able to see what is there because contrast is so important. So if you have somebody who's having continence issues, who's missing the toilet bowl, consider, again, putting like a dark colored toilet bowl in that bathroom or doing some repainting or other work to make it make it easier for them to follow. The slide on the bottom shows a window without a curtain. And this is something that was taught to me years ago by an old friend, Betsy Brawley, a very early innovator with design concepts and dementia care, that glare can actually be physically painful for the older eye. So again, maybe you have somebody in a family room, they're having agitation, they're upset, they're throwing things, or things are not going well. You get curtains up, the sun isn't in their eyes, and they do better. And then finally, that little picture on the right side there, again, clutter and overstimulation. If someone's closet is full of dresses, it's confusing, it's difficult for them to help find their outfit. Do your best to simplify the environment wherever you can. Now I want to turn to just addressing a few special topics, and forgive me, I know we're packing a lot of information here. I want to give you lots of good tools, but again, there'll be lots of good information with the Alzheimer's Association to explore these topics further. But let's talk a bit about apathy. Often caregivers say, David, my dad just won't do anything. I can barely get him out of the house, get him up the sofa. And we do know that people with dementia, they kind of often lose that start button. It's hard to get them kind of moving and going. So keep your requests simple. I recognize that we often have to initiate things. Mom, hey, I have your art project all set up, and maybe you have mom sit down, you put the brush in her hand, you take her hand, you dip it in the paint, you start the painting on the canvas, and then she'll paint a nice little watercolor. But if we just leave them to their own devices, nothing will happen. And of course, sometimes you just have to give it a little bit of a push. I like to say sometimes it's easier to get forgiveness and permission. Hey, mom, come with me. I want to show you something. And maybe you walk mom into the garden and just have the table set up and the chairs for her to sit there. You don't want to say, do you want to come out to the garden? Because mom might say no. So try to, again, say, come with me, let's do this. And then I love this concept of trying 3 times to turn a no into a yes, because so many people with dementia, again, say no to things. They don't really track what we're saying, what we're asking them. So you want to say, mom, hey, how about we go to the rose garden today outside? The roses are beautiful. Oh no, dear, I'm tired. Now, mother, your favorite color is red. The red ones are out. Oh, I don't think so. Now, mom, come take my shoulder. I need your help. We want to check on the pruning. You're a wonderful gardener. I could sure use your advice. Oh, okay. So again, how do we get people going? All of those I think can be very helpful. Aggression. I have a lot on this slide here. Aggression, by the way, it can happen, but I want to assure you, particularly for some of you who are new to caregiving, that it's a myth that everybody with Alzheimer's or dementia somehow is violent or aggressive. It can happen when they get frightened or scared, but it's not as common as sometimes people fear. But look for triggers if something happens. When did this happen? Maybe the grandchildren have been over and it was just too much stimulation. When, why, where? Often you can kind of begin to figure out your patterns. Keep a little behavioral log of things that go wrong when. Sometimes, again, certain times of day is when things go south on you. Overstimulation, boredom. Again, we've discussed health causes. I like to say that behavior communicates a message. So again, if something's happening and your mother's throwing something or, kind of raising her fists, you want to just pause, back away, make sure you're taking care of yourself, of course. Slow down, maybe try the activity later, offer reassuring words, but try to understand these triggers, because not always, but often we can figure out a root cause. Now, on the right in that third section, there is something that I think Trilogy is particularly good at, is using the person's life story to understand some favorite topics. Maybe someone loved to talk about Italian cooking, and you can talk about, their favorite recipes. Maybe someone loved to share early childhood stories about, an adventure. I remember I had a gentleman one time who loved to talk about when he ran away from home as a child and walked across the Brooklyn Bridge. So who knows if that story was even true, but when we cued him, he just would tell this very entertaining, funny story for 15 or 20 minutes. And it was sort of a way to bring back some happiness and warmth to him. And of course, music, pet therapy, time outside can be calming. And if things aren't going well, don't be afraid to fall on the sword. Hey, mom, I am so sorry. I sure screwed that up. I'll do better next time. And sometimes this can be something you do even after a shower or personal care that can kind of, lower the temperature around aggression. Repetitive actions, words, behaviors. This one is such a tough one. I think for a lot of us who are caregivers, patience is so important. And when mom says, what time is it? What time is it? Maybe 15 times in a row, it can be very, very tough. So remember that these are caused by confusion, forgetfulness, or anxiety. Try to have that empathy. Be reassuring. Let them know all is well, because sometimes anxiety can be the cause of these things. We redirect by turning the person's life story. When mother is saying, what time is it? What time is it, mom? Would you help me on this project? You are such a good seamstress. Would you help me organize this fabric, and maybe give her a project she might enjoy? And this open-ended questions, what time is it? What time is it? Well, mom, tell me more. Are you someone who always likes to be on time? Oh, you're going to the doctor's office now. Do you wait, or are they late? Sometimes tell me more about that. I want to go home. I want to go home. Tell me more about your home. Do you live in the city or the country? Do you think the dishes should be done before you go to bed at night? Sometimes these things, these open-ended questions, can lead them away from this repetitive action. But again, this can be tough. Practice patience. A care refusal. Gosh, I think this is where the rubber hits the road, as they say, because again, bathing, care refusal can be so tough. I think globally, what I'd like to say is, be organized, try to be affirming and positive, give them as much control, but recognize that, again, the person with dementia, in so many ways, just like you and me, most of us don't want somebody else to give us a shower. Most of us don't want someone else to change us, right? So there's a lot of pride and we can understand why this happens. So again, there's lack of awareness with dementia. They may not understand they have an odor, the personal hygiene, embarrassment, pride. Understand that this is part of the disease. Mom and dad just aren't being ornery or difficult. They may be forgetful. They may think they've already had a shower. The environment can be confusing. Again, maybe if you remember that picture of the white bathroom, that might be confusing. Get a nice red floor mat, put in a colorful shower curtain, do some things to give them more cueing. Find the best time of day. There are some people who've always showered at night or like a tub bath in the morning. And recognize, give yourself a break, recognize this can be tough stuff, which is why sometimes the professional staff, either a good in-home worker or someone in a senior living community, will often have better luck with personal care. On the right, I think are a few ideas. I won't cover them all, but I'll just say again that, try to have some calming language. Gosh, mom, your spa appointment is ready. Hey, we are going to have so much fun this afternoon. After you get all spiffed up, we're heading out for ice cream. Your granddaughter's visiting. And of course, ultimately, you kind of do what works, and maybe it's time to blame the doctor. Mom, I know you don't want to take the shower, but the doctor says 3 times a week you need it for your skincare. And again, something like this can help you go from no to yes. Paranoia hallucinations sadly do come with dementia, particularly as I mentioned earlier with Lewy body dementia. Recognize that these hallucinations are real. Don't argue, don't correct. Some can be rather benign, as I mentioned earlier, the cat on the table. Others can be more frightening. When this happens, I think let them know you are on their side. Provide comfort and reassurance. I'm so sorry that cat scared you. Gosh, how did that rascal get in? I'll make sure I let him out. Again, this idea of kind of making them feel like you believe them can be very, very important. Don't argue, don't correct. And sometimes if the person is having some paranoia about money, for example, like you're taking my money, it doesn't help to argue and be so literal. Maybe put a bunch of $1 bills in his wallet or some expired credit cards. Maybe have them, as I'll share a story later, sign the checks that you're filling out so they can feel a bit more in control. But with paranoia, say, I believe you, I understand. Oh my goodness, we'll work on this together. And sometimes that can be reassuring that they read your emotion. To recap, challenging moments may have many causes. Be a detective and again, look for medical and health, environmental triggers. If you can't see any, just reflect on your own approach. Are you slowing down, listening, giving them choices and options? Be careful, because sometimes if we come on too strong, if we push them, they'll definitely push back. Look at time of day and of course what the person's communicating with their behavior, because often when we kind of apply this sort of detective approach, we can figure things out. In my own philosophy, embraced by Trilogy, about being a best friend to the person with dementia, it can be so powerful to let them know that you care about them, that you're there for them, you're traveling this journey with them. Be reassuring and use a few things from their life story about their favorite foods, their favorite colors, their achievements, to kind of re-engage them and redirect them as well. When you're having a challenge, I do encourage you consider calling the Alzheimer's Association 800 number, talking to some of the staff at Trilogy. The staff are always willing to brainstorm with you and come up with some ideas. And recognize that we don't really have a treatment for dementia. So the treatment is you and me. It's creating a good day, it's activities, it's engagement, and socialization is good for the brain, good for the body, and does reduce these behaviors, which is why I'm so happy to endorse Trilogy's distinctive and life-affirming BFF program, because in this sort of wonderful therapeutic environment, the Trilogy Health Services team members, they learn the unique life story, they use it throughout the day. Residents who live in the legacy memory care neighborhoods are given a chance to express themselves and live their best life and cook their favorite recipes, listen to their favorite songs, express themselves creatively, and exercise their bodies and minds. By doing so, we help them find joy, both in memories that have passed and in present experiences. Trilogy has a unique activity program called Daily Rhythms, and the Daily Rhythms programs creates a schedule based on the residents' energy levels throughout the day. The program offers both structured activities and unstructured moments that allow for natural conversation. For example, a word game may lead to a discussion about a childhood memory or maybe a favorite food. I think this Daily Rhythms program is very interesting to me because, again, it recognizes that all of us have ups and downs during the day, times when we're high energy, lower energy. In this case, again, the staff can kind of use the daily rhythms to know the perfect time to exercise, be out of doors, enjoy a really funny YouTube video, or perhaps later in the day have that herbal tea and wind down and listen to some classical music and kind of follow the resident's lead throughout the day. As we wrap up this discussion about dementia-related behaviors, I thought I might offer maybe 3 little 1-minute case studies about some things that have worked in the past for me and best practices I've heard. And hopefully some of these will resonate with you. So let's just jump in and talk about paying bills in the checkbook. A good friend of mine, pays all of her father's bills. Her father has earlier dementia. And the father, you would think, would be so appreciative of his daughter's volunteerism, but in fact, he's really unhappy. He feels the daughter's taken his money, taken his checkbook, taken his credit cards, and they've had a lot of arguments. Now, at first, my friend, again, would kind of argue and correct, but then she finally kind of had that light bulb moment. She embraced this idea of being a best friend to her dad and having empathy and understanding that the loss of control was common. Having empathy and understanding that his paranoia was there because he didn't understand why the daughter was paying his bills. It had nothing to do with the daughter's integrity. So now my friend brings the checks in, the father signs them. She has her father take a little red ink stamp and stamp the invoices paid. And after they're done working together, she says to her father, "Thanks, Dad. What would I do without you? You're so good at this." So it's got a good example of how caregivers, all of us have to pivot with this disease. We can't do the same old, same old. We've got to always think about understanding the dynamics of our family member and giving them an opportunity to have more sense of control. Arguing over driving. We know that people with Alzheimer's disease and other dementia should not really drive. In most states, though, having that diagnosis is not an automatic revocation of your driving privileges. It means you might have to come in and have a driving test. But again, being creative, there are families who discuss this with mom and dad, and the father says, "Nothing's wrong with me. That doctor doesn't know what he's doing. I'm not giving up my car." So again, maybe in this case, you turn him into the motor vehicle department anonymously and they take away the license and it becomes their fault, not your fault. Maybe you figure out a way to disable the car or other kinds of creative approaches. But often with dementia, we can't tackle things head on. We've got to kind of come up with some creative approaches. And when you're doing this in their best interest, I think you're forgiven if you're not completely being truthful or forthcoming about the circumstances. Again, in the case of driving, where another friend of mine reported her dad to the motor vehicle department and they took his license away, the daughter said, "Dad, I'm so sorry this happened. That seems so unfair. Maybe you can take the test again in another month or two, but for now, I guess we'll lend the car to cousin Johnny. You can keep a good eye on it." So these are the ways we kind of finesse. And in my books, I call it having the knack of great care. And one more kind of mini case study, when we look at afternoon agitation, this can be common as the person gets a bit tired during the day. Build in a simple ritual, have a little, English tea or tea and cookies or an ice cream cone, or take a short walk, or maybe an afternoon nap, or perhaps even some music. Little afternoon rituals can sometimes, again, calm the person and address this kind of what we used to call sundowning behavior. When the sun goes down, the person often with dementia gets that agitation. Again, it's probably due to the fatigue and all the energy they put out during the day. So as we wind down our webinar, I wanted to kind of do a shout out again to the very creative caregivers at Trilogy and just share one success story from assisted living about how a caring environment and talented team can change a behavior and turn a challenge into a success. In this example, a nurse moves into a legacy memory care neighborhood. And in many organizations, the nurse moves in, they have some minimal information about her, and I guess they do the best they can. But in the case of Trilogy, the BFF program is very committed to understanding who this person has been during her life. What is her life story? What are her values? What kind of work does she do? What gives her joy? And we know that a lot of nurses are very task-oriented, are very caring, they're very organized, and they want to help others. So in this case, perhaps on the first day in the legacy memory neighborhood, The staff give her a clipboard for her official paperwork. They make rounds with the nurse. Maybe they ask for some simple healthcare advice like, well, hey, sometimes I get a headache in the afternoon. Do you think I should take some aspirin? So again, asking for an opinion means you value the person. Perhaps you ask this new resident to sit beside a Trilogy nurse while he or she does paperwork. And I've often seen that in communities where, there's a resident sitting with one of the team members, as her assistant or helping out. Again, it helps that feeling that person have a sense of purpose. Maybe we address her, instead of we use her name Betty, we say Nurse Betty. So good morning, Nurse Betty. It's your friend David. How are you? It's going to be a great day. I have your work plan for the day. Let's put it right onto your clipboard. Again, addressing them with an appropriate title helps them feel like an important kind of VIP living in memory care. And again, praise. Gosh, Nurse Betty, what's this I hear that you delivered 1,000 babies as a midwife? You are really quite a caring person. And you see this simple shift of giving her a 99-cent clipboard, giving her material to make rounds, showing her that she has purpose, she has a job, she has a role within the neighborhood. It now allows her to feel valued and part of a caring friendship and caring community. And this person becomes one of your most successful residents. So you can begin to see how this best friends approach can be so simple to really help that person make a great adjustment, in this case, from maybe their own home to memory care. Thank you again for being part of this presentation. And I just put up on the screen just a few ways to learn more about the Best Friends approach through my professional website. You can always like the Best Friends approach on Facebook, or I welcome your emails at my personal email, davidtruxell@gmail.com. And again, I'm so honored to be part of the Trilogy family and be part of this series. Trilogy is a place where family comes to live. Every component of the BFF program is designed to make our legacy residents feel supported, loved, and valued, because at the end of the day, they're not just residents, they're also family members. And I just love this really caring and life-affirming sentiment of Trilogy. You can learn more about the BFF program by visiting trilogybff.com. Again, thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to seeing any questions that you would like to send to us, and we will be happy to get back to you as soon as we can with answers to your questions.